Sam, an atheist, she, her pronouns. You've got a question for Armin about demonic possession. Well, hey, you were on the Atheist Experience with Armin, Navabii, and Secular Rarity. What you got for us?
Hi, yeah, so I wanted to talk to Armin specifically because he's an ex-Muslim. I'm an ex-Muslim as well. And I just wanted to ask, okay, so what happened was I recently watched a video of two of my relatives. They're like my cousins, let's say, probably in their mid-20s. So in the video, you could see like there was something wrong with them. You know, there was the whole wailing and howling, and their limbs were kind of contorted, and their eyes were kind of rolling back, and they were kind of saying, you know, taking possession of this person. If you want them back, you know, I don't know, there's nothing you can do, or, you know, like just what you basically something out of like an Exorcist movie. So I just wanted to ask. I did some research on it, on how you'd explain this, you know, scientifically, like medically maybe, and I just got some answers about mania or maybe bipolar disorder and also schizophrenia. But, you know, these were people that I knew not to be suffering from any mental illness. So I'm kind of wondering, like, you know, my whole family was like, oh, this is, you know, they had imams come in and sheikhs and everything and trying to pray for them and trying to communicate with, I don't know, trying to communicate with either the jinn or the person. And, you know, my family was just trying to not even call a doctor or take them to a mental hospital, or, you know, they brought some kind of these, I don't even think they're approved, kind of potions that say, oh, this get rid of jinn-related diseases and stuff like that, and trying to make them drink that and trying to make the whole family drink that. So we're not, you know, even my mom was like, oh, you can't even, because I like to sit outside and read. So she's like, oh, when the time for prayer is coming in, I can't sit outside or listen to music or anything because I'm going to be possessed by jinn. And I'm just trying to find out, like, what is the explanation for this? Because they're really normal people, and this kind of just came out of the blue. So I don't understand. It's not that I believe in demons or anything. I just don't know what it is. And
right. So first, a disclaimer: whatever disorder caused that, we're not experts in, you know, figuring out what exactly happened, because to come up with, like, if it's a mental disorder or any other disorder, you need to talk to experts for them to evaluate what happened. But what I do know is that, first of all, in the Islamic world, these types of videos are very, very popular, right? I've seen so many of them, and they get a lot of interaction, right? And I also do know, both based on the experts I've listened to, and both based on my personal experience with my cousin, that certain disorders just come out of nowhere. Like, you might not have a history of it. My cousin, was normal, like didn't have any mental disorders for all his life, and then at some point he just started hearing voices, and the voices convinced him to do something that I don't know if I can even say on YouTube, right? But it cost his life. So just very fast, out of nowhere, with no background, and it wasn't even religion related. It was just hit out of nowhere. But in an environment where you believe in jinns and demonic possessions, certain mental disorders just that belief that exists in that environment feeds into that mental disorder, and if the person is convinced that by the people who are around them that whatever they're experiencing is because of jinn or demonic possession, then it's likely that they will start behaving in a certain ways that they have seen or been convinced that other people with that position will behave. So that's a thing that sometimes happens. Again, I'm not an expert on mental disorders, so if you want an explanation, you probably need to go look into expert opinion. I just want to mention that. But it's another thing I do know, but you need to double check yourself, is that the vast majority of these behaviors with people that people have when the community claims that they have been possessed, it matches perfectly with what experts would expect. Certain types of disorders, it matches it perfectly with what they would predict with certain disorders, especially in an environment like that, right? So yeah, this is very dangerous, by the way, because as you mentioned, because people have these beliefs, they don't go seek the actual care that they need, the actual help and the care that they need. And this is a very, when you have mental disorders, it's already very damaging and very painful and hard to deal with. But when you add religion on top of that, it just makes it a lot more toxic. Imagine if somebody is hearing voices, and without religion at all, you go tell them that, oh, the voices that you're hearing is actually genuinely a real entity that is talking to you, and you need to take it seriously. So this just makes their problem much bigger, by 10 times worse than the already existing problem that they were having. And that's what religion does to mental disorder. A lot of times people try to separate, is this behavior because of religion, or is it because of mental disorder, where sometimes it's just they're just feeding into each other. And I'm also not trying to make mental disorder to seem to be something taboo. These are obviously people that require help, and religion comes and makes that a lot very, very difficult. Is there anything, what do you think about this answer? What do you think is the most plausible explanation for what's happening here, based on you being an atheist and you being an ex-Muslim, and based on what you saw on those videos? What do you think is happening here?
I mean, I obviously think it's something mentally wrong. Like it's a medical emergency to me. But what's weird was that, if it was happening to one person, I wouldn't be calling in here. I wouldn't be, second guessing it, but like the fact that it was happening to both of them at the same time, and they were both reacting in the same way, I'm like, is this like hypnosis? Is she like mirroring? Are they mirroring each other? Or like, it was kind of like they were both in some kind of choreographed. I'm like, is it staged, or like, what is going on?
Sometimes it happens. No, sometimes have you heard about mass hysteria? Sometimes an entire community of people just start affecting each other and copy those behavior. That happens.
It's more likely. It's more likely to
okay.
believe something
Right.
and at the very least go along with it and not push back so hard on it, when literally everyone around
Right.
you is confirming it with their own experience, right? Like, for instance, if we talk
Right,
to
right.
people who are no longer believers that used to speak in tongues. I have a few close friends of mine that used to speak in tongues regularly, and they feel so odd about it now. And one of the big reasons that they feel so odd is because when they look back on those experiences, what they recognize is that they weren't actually feeling anything. There was actually nothing going on inside of them. It was just that every other person around them was going, like everybody's doing that in unison. And so, like, yeah, it just kind of makes sense that you're going to jump on board with that. We're social creatures. We're social animals. You know, we see one person doing something, and then we're like, oh, okay, yeah, that does kind of look good, you know? So, mass hysteria, I think, is definitely a reasonable answer on that.
Also, can I just add something else? Right now, for what you're asking, okay, we have very good explanations for why these things happen, right? But if we didn't, that would still not make
that's where I was the
jinn or demonic. Yeah, the jinn and demonic option, that is still not a viable answer. So right now, for you calling it, like, how could we explain this? Let's imagine if you called in and we were like, oh my God, we have no idea. How could anything like this happen? We had no explanation. I just want you to know that even in that situation, if we had, the jinn option would still not be on the table. Like the idea of all the laws of nature breaking apart probably is not the one that you want to put your finger on, even if we couldn't exactly explain what is happening here. That would be an appeal to ignorance. That would be an appeal to ignorance fallacy, right? Yes.
Right. I just wanted to ask SR if, like, in Christianity, like, do the same demons that affect Muslims affect Christians as well?
Yes and no. I would say yes and
like
no.
The same?
Right? Yeah, I would say yes and no. One reason is just because in Islam you do have the concept of jinns, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, Armin, but you have both jinns and demons. They're not exactly the same thing, right? Like there are good jinns, right?
Right. You know, so the bad jinns we have multiple kinds of bad jinns, and some of the bad jinns are called shayateen or shaitans, right? So demon is just a Christian thing that people, when they want to look into Islam, the jinn is the closest thing to what you have in demons in Christianity. So people just use it interchangeably. But yeah, we have good jinns and we have bad jinns. We have Muslim jinns. We have atheist jinns. We have, you know,
so that whole thing, that whole part of it gets a little strange. But yeah, to answer that question, Sam, kind of. I mean, kind of. And the reason is because we know, historically speaking, obviously a lot of the stuff in the Quran and a lot of stuff in Islam in general does pull from stuff that Christianity has, right? Which of course pulled from Judaism, which of course pulled from Zoroastrianism and other things, right? And so you can see a line going through all of these religions all the way back. The difference is that oftentimes people kind of change it a little, right? Like the Zoroastrians were like, these people are good and these people are bad, and then the Jews were like, nope, we flop it, you know. And so we see that a lot. I think what is probably most important is that, again, the attributes and the characteristics described to these creatures, and you know, what they can do to us. So just like in Islam, there's a thought somebody could be demonically possessed and they could go do a bunch of bad things, you know, that absolutely exists in many veins of Christianity. This is why, unfortunately, to this day, there are still Catholic priests who go around the world torturing people, claiming to exorcise demons out of them by beating them or suffocating them, or there's 1,000 different ways. It's always very strange to me that the ways that seem to be the ones that work the best are the ones that are physical punishment, as opposed to something like spiritual or metaphysical. It's odd to me that throwing holy water on the skin of a human being that is currently being inhabited by a spirit, an evil spirit, does anything. I don't know how that works. I think there's really good evidence to disagree that's the case, right? But yeah, they're in, especially the Abrahamic faith.
The same question I asked. Sorry.
No, please go ahead.
I'm sorry, go on. Okay, yeah, that's the same question I asked, but basically in my head, when they were handing out this, you know, it looks like cough syrup, and on the box it's like, oh, for cures of all ailments and jinn-related jinn-related diseases, and I'm like, what the hell are jinn-related diseases? Like, what is that? Like, how do like
I like
how is something that you've made in the physical world supposed to cure something that's not in the physical world?
So historically, these were not diseases; these were just jinn possessions,
right?
And then later on, people understood that jinn possession were just diseases. So some people realize, okay, these are not jinn possessions. These are just diseases. But some people are like, why not both? Why not just combine the disease with the jinn possession and say jinn-related diseases? And also, another thing you might find interesting is that jinns were actually holy in Arab religions before it became, many Arabs considered it. So the pre-Islamic Arabia believed in jinns that were existing, a part of nature, kind of like spirits, natural spirits that lived in the desert and were other elements of nature that showed themselves as jinns, and they kind of considered them holy, and they prayed to them and asked them. The Arabs they asked them favors, and what Islam did is it demoted them. And there's a verse in the Quran that clarifies that they're not as special as you think they were now, because they used to have access to the highest part of heaven, and now God, that's why they were powerful, where the angels were, and now God is throwing, shooting stars at them, and now they don't have access to that part of the sky anymore, and that's why they're not as capable as before anymore. And the Islam teaches you that some of them submitted to Muhammad and became Muslim, and the ones that didn't are called shayateen. So the pre-Islamic idea of a jinn, which was a holy thing, a spiritual thing, was because Islam itself is an Abrahamic religion, and Judaism has this concept of Satan. That concept turned into shayateen, and that name was attributed to this concept from pre-Islamic Arabia, which was jinn, and some of the jinn were called shayateen. So it merged these two concepts together.
Yeah. And again, that's just something we see, across faiths. We see people kind of flipping stuff like that. Unfortunately, our caller Sam dropped just at the end there, but I think you gave a really good explanation. And yeah, unfortunately, these thoughts of demon possession and stuff are still all too common. And again, it results in literal torture of people. So, that's why we advocate for critical thinking on this channel and here at the ACA, folks, because it's not just about you can be an atheist and still believe that people get demonically possessed, so we need to actually have good reasons for our beliefs.